Justin Trudeau says you're extreme, but he's the one who has violated our civil rights. He says you're a fringe. Well, that's a pretty bloody big fringe.
Well, I remember during the actual trucker convoy in February when you and Kean Simone were embedded with the border blockade at Coutts, and the men were negotiating in good faith with the government and with the RCMP.
But the communication and direction we've been given is this. You, if you do not wish to be here or do not wish to have your truck impounded and be arrested, you are being given the option to move out to your vehicle and leave.
The men were negotiating in good faith with the government and with the RCMP, but the RCMP wasn't doing the same, and now we know why. Because Justin Trudeau was trying to gin up some narrative of a violent insurrection or something. So these cops had political instructions to make things worse, not better.
Real concerns about what's going on, not just in Ottawa, but right across the country. The Coutts blockade that started up on the same first weekend that the Ottawa occupation did. These are the things that you say, okay, as we look at a whole range of potential outcomes in this, there might be a moment where we have to invoke the Emergencies Act.
So I received a phone call from you guys in the saloon with these men asking for legal help because it was not things weren't even. And so I promised on the phone that day that Rebel News would crowdfund a lawyer to make things safer, to make sure that the men's rights were respected. And so we retained Chad Williamson, who's an excellent lawyer. I've used him on Rebel Matters before.
The logistics and the practicalities of actually implementing that enforcement, I think it may turn out to be a little bit more difficult given the fluidity of the situation and the number of vehicles on the highway. So as it stands, the blockade still stands. People are here, people aren't leaving, and people still want to have their voices heard.
And of course, he went down to the saloon, to the Coutts blockade, and I think he lowered the temperature. I think he was a liaison back and forth. He did great work there, and now he's representing these three peaceful protesters who are being prosecuted in what can only be called a vendetta. The prosecutor is looking for 10 years in prison for peaceful protesters. It is so out of sync with our legal norms. The thing is, defending against such a malicious prosecution is so expensive, no normal human could pay for it. Like, I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, and none of this should be happening at all. So I made a promise to the men that we would defend them, and I'm trying to keep that promise. We have paid the bills of Chad, and we intend to do that all the way through. It's a lot of money, so we'd like people to help at truckerdefensefund.com. And we think we're going to win. We think these men are peaceful protesters who did nothing wrong. We think it's a political prosecution that was ginned up by the last regime, Jason Kenney.
His position as a politician hasn't changed. He has not changed really. He's backpedaling like crazy. He's making excuses for what happened in the past. And he's continuing to lie, and I've seen this coming, that with future, he's leaving an open door with future variants to put in mandates again.
No more mandates.
So we got to come stick this out until all mandates are lifted permanently.
The last regime, Jason Kenney, is not premier in part because of his abusive treatment of these truckers. I think the new Premier, Danielle Smith, should call off this political prosecution, and I think these men should be allowed to go back to their families. I think the police and prosecutors of Alberta should be focusing on real crimes, violent crimes, property crimes, not on so-called political crimes. So I wanted to come down here to meet the three men myself. I just met George. I want to meet the other two. I reiterated to George my promise that we would cover the legal fees, and I wanted to see how things look. Frankly, I'm a little bit embarrassed for Lethbridge that they deploy all these police heroes. Joking with one cop, is some drug gangland honcho on trial.
And now I see they're protecting the media of the state.
Oh, are they? Isn't that funny? Yeah, the CBC, they know whose side they're on. The government broadcaster with the government police. It's very fitting.
If you want to help Alex, Marco, and George with their charges of mischief over $5,000 and the potential for them to spend 10 years in prison for a peaceful protest in their alleged relation, well, you got to go to truckerdefensefund.ca.